Hello and welcome to Hilton Head Fishing Adventures. My name is Captain Charlie Beeden, and today we're going to talk a little bit about fly tying basics. This is going to be a two-part series. Today we're going to talk about the materials and tools that you would find within the fly room and at your local fly shop. In the second part, we're going to talk a little bit about how to use those tools and materials. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at some of the tools that you're going to find within the fly room. The first thing that you're going to need to have is you're going to need to get yourself a good vise. The basic purpose of the vise is simply to hold the hook in place. To use this thing, all I do is take my hook, place it in the jaws, press down on the lever, and then I want to make sure that my hook is held securely within those jaws, and we're ready to go. The next tool that you're going to use quite often within the fly room is going to be the bobbin. Basically what this guy is we take a cartridge of thread, we load it up into the bobbin, the thread goes through the tip, and this is used to tie our materials down with. To use it, all we do is simply rotate that tip around the hook. And the nice thing about it is when I have to move to go pick up more materials or to get different tools, you can just let it hang and it'll stay in place. The next tool that we're going to need is a good sharp pair of scissors. You don't want to get a real big pair of scissors, you want something fine, small, for these smaller detail work that you're going to be doing. We'll use them for a whole host of things: clipping, snipping, working on pulling off extra materials. We'll also use the scissors for trimming flies whenever we get done. You'll be using the scissors a whole bunch when you're tying your flies, and you need to get yourself a good pair of scissors. Next, you want to think about getting yourself a comb. Any comb will work. We use this all the time for brushing back materials, feathering out materials, and so forth. Another tool that you'll use a lot in the fly room is the bodkin. This is basically just a heavy-duty needle on a stick. We'll use this for picking at threads, pulling through materials. I also use it quite a bit for applying epoxies, glues, pulling stickers off of backing, and so forth. You'll find a whole lot of uses for this little guy. Another tool that we use in the fly room are the hackle pliers. This is just more of a precision pair of pliers. You can use it for holding materials back while you're tying. Sometimes what will happen is whenever you pull materials out of the package, you may hold some of those materials down while you're not using them, and so forth. Another tool that you may find around the fly room and that we use from time to time is the packing tool. This comes in two parts. You can put it together, and basically what it's for is, say for example, that I have some materials that are unevenly distributed. I can place those within the packing tool, pack it down, and you'll notice when I pull the materials out, the base of them will now be evenly distributed. There's a lot of other tools that you'll find, while you're tying flies, and things that you can make, things that you can buy, but these are the basics, and this is what you're going to need to go ahead and get started. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the materials that you may find in around the fly room and for fly tying. Alright guys, next let's take a look at some of the accessories that we may use to tie some of our flies. The first thing that we're going to need is some different types of glues. For example, here I've got some epoxy, two-part epoxy. You can get this in 5-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute, depends on what your application is going to be. We'll use this for anything from making true epoxy flies to sealing the heads of some of our flies where we want to have a little bit more of a build-up, or we want something with a little bit more strength. Another glue that we use quite a bit is Zap-A-Gap. This is simply just a super glue. We'll use this generally in the middle of tying our flies in different places just to seal threads quickly to ensure that they don't come apart while we're tying and while we're fishing with them. The other glue that I'll use on almost all my flies is some sort of a head cement or head sealer. This is Sally Hansen Hard as Nails. It's nice. It's got this little applicator brush. Say that I just got done tying a fly. What I can do is I can brush a little bit of that glue right on the head And what that'll do is that'll seal the threads down for me so that they can't unravel while I'm casting and fishing with that fly. Another item that we're going to need, obviously, all of our flies are going to need a hook. The hooks that I generally use are the Mustad 3407s. The reason that I like them is they've got this nice long shank. It gives you something to tie on whenever you're making up your flies. The other thing that we're going to need to tie all of our flies with is some sort of a thread. There's a lot of different threads on the market. The one that I use is this Danville's flat waxed nylon thread. The thing that I really like about this type of thread is that one, it comes in a lot of colors, so it gives you a lot of options. And then two, it's a pretty strong thread. We can really pull on this stuff and it's not going to break on us. And the thing that I like about the wax thread is the way that it lays down on top of itself. It makes it easier for whip finishing my flies and so forth. Another item that you might want to consider when you're tying your flies is to get some kind of a permanent marker like these Sharpie markers in different colors. There are a lot of different things that you can do with them. For example, I can just pull back on my fly. I can put some bars down on the side here, maybe with this black. Take some red, put a throat in there, some yellow, put some eyes, a whole host of things that you can do with the markers to save yourself a little bit of time. And the other item that you may want to look at getting is a good pattern book. Whether you're tying freshwater or saltwater flies, you're going to want to get a pattern book that matches the types of flies that you're going to be tying in your area. The nice thing about the pattern books is they're going to show you a picture of the fly so you can see what it looks like, and then they're also going to give you a recipe, and in many cases they're going to give you instructions on how to actually tie that fly. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the different types of materials that we're going to use whenever we're making up some of our different fly patterns. Alright guys, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the materials that we would use to make some of our flies. These materials can be broken down into two different categories. You've got your natural materials and your synthetic materials. The natural materials would be those that came off of an animal, for example a bucktail or feathers and so forth. The synthetics would be those that are man-made. To start with, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these natural materials that I have for you. For example, we've got these Zonker strips. These are simply just pieces of rabbit. How we use these guys in most cases is I'll use these a lot of times for tail materials. They come in all kinds of different colors, as do all these materials. All these materials are going to come in different colors. Say that I want to put a tail on one of my flies. I may tie in a Zonker strip, and the nice thing about it is that it's going to flow real nice in the water for me. Another natural material that we use quite often is bucktail. We use a lot of bucktail. In fact, whenever you're talking about synthetics, a lot of your synthetics are actually imitating bucktail. We use the bucktail for a lot of different things. For example, I might pull off a little piece of my bucktail here. I could use this to tie in a tail, the back end. I could also use it to build up a body. I could put that on my hook, spread it around, and start building up a body, give some bulk, and so forth. A lot of different uses for the bucktail. And a lot of your recipes are actually going to call for bucktail. Another deer material that we have is this deer belly hair. Make sure that whenever you're purchasing your deer that you don't mix this belly hair up with the bucktail. This is specifically made for spinning and for building up big heads and for building up topwater flies. For most of the flies that you're going to tie, you need the bucktail, not the belly hair. Another natural material that you're going to use in the fly room quite often are feathers or hackles. They come in all different sizes. You see, if you buy one of these big pieces or these big patches, you can pull off little hackles, or you can work off the end and tie some of the bigger ones for making your bigger flies. To use them, we'll simply pull one off, and you'll notice it's got a lot of profile to it. It's a little bit thicker here in the middle, and at the end it starts to taper down. If you're tying up a bait fish pattern, that would basically kind of imitate a tail, so we can put it on our hook, make the tail end of a fish. The other thing that we can do with this is we can tie this down onto our hook. And I could actually spin this feather around the hook, and it would give me the look of, say, caterpillar legs or shrimp legs and so forth. It gives it a little bit of a hairy appearance, build up a little bit of body with it. Other things that you can do with the feathers is you can make little crab claws and so forth. A lot of things that you can do with the feathers. Another natural material, and I'll put this in quite a bit of my flies, especially my saltwater flies, is this marabou material. This stuff is super supple. It flows real nice in the water. When I hold it up here, it just looks like a big feather. But when I get it wet, you'll see it sort of thins out and it gets a real nice profile on it. And that's really the key when you're tying these flies. It doesn't so much matter what they look like when they're dry, it's whenever you put them in the water when they get wet, how they move in the water and how they look in the water. What's the profile, what's the color, what's the, how do they show up whenever they're actually in use. And the nice thing about this marabou is when you get it in the water, it tends to flow real nice. It gives the fly a lot of action. Let's take a look at some of our synthetics. I have a couple examples here. I have some Supreme hair and some Slinky fiber. Pull some of this stuff out. This stuff's the Slinky fiber and the Supreme hair are real similar. The Slinky fiber is a little more supple, but you'll see here this is a lot like bucktail. It's just in a synthetic form. It's actually real nice to work with. One of the biggest differences that you're going to find between the naturals and the synthetics, and it's why a lot of guys are actually going with the synthetics these days, is that the synthetics don't absorb water. So what happens is whenever you put them in the water, whenever you're fishing with them, they tend to cast a lot nicer, because whenever you pick that fly up out of the water, make a back cast, the water will shed off of them, and then whenever you're trying to get the fly back out, it's not quite so heavy. These materials also move really nicely in the water, and they tend to sink pretty quick for you. Probably the biggest synthetic that's come onto the market that's really made a big difference is all these EP fibers. And these are the Enrique Pugliese fibers. These are super subtle. They're really nice to work with, and he's got a lot of different materials out there that you can try. Once again, his base material, basically for the most part, imitates the bucktail, but you'll notice, as with all the synthetics, they're a little bit longer. You can tie bigger flies. Another material in a synthetic that we use quite a bit is the Estaz. This is great for building up bodies and for building a little bit of bulk into your flies. It's got a lot of nice flash in it. To use this stuff, I mean, we simply, tie it onto the hook, anchor it down, and we basically just wrap it around the hook. It's really easy to, it's really easy to use. You'll see here, I'll simply wrap it around the hook a little bit, and I was able to create somewhat of a body with it. It's a material that you'll probably use quite a bit around the fly room. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the different flashes that we might use whenever we're tying our flies. Alright guys, in a lot of the flies that we're going to tie, and especially in saltwater flies, we're going to add some kind of a flash. What the flash does is it gives off some, it reflects the sunlight and gives off somewhat of a sparkle. There's a lot of different kinds of flash out there. It all basically does the same thing. It really just depends on where you put it within the fly. A couple types of flash that I have here for you. We have this crystal flash, and then I also have Flashabou. I'll use this stuff a lot of times in my tail materials, just to give it a little bit of sparkle, make it a little bit more like a bait fish. Clip a little bit of this off here. And what I'll do is I'll just simply wrap that around my thread and put it in with my material that I've already tied on here. And what will happen now is, as this material flows through the water, this flash will flow with it, and it'll give off some kind of sparkle, and it'll give it a nice look. Another flash that we have here that we'll use quite a bit is this wing flash. This stuff almost looks like a Brillo pad, but it's a lot finer. And it's just as the name implies. We generally put this stuff on the wings. A lot of times I'll put it down, spread it out a little bit here, We'll put it down along the sides of our fly. Maybe I'll put a little bit down on the right side, and then I'll put a little bit down off the left side here. And that'll give me a little bit of flash throughout the body of the fly. Another type of material that we have for flash, we have mylar piping, or more commonly I'll use the, this mylar braid. A lot of times with the mylar braid, it just comes in basically a thick thread form, like this. And to use this, all I do is tie it on, and then simply wrap it around the hook. And a lot of times this will just give my hook a little bit of color and a little bit of bulk to put off some flash for me. Flash is really important whenever you're tying a lot of your flies, like I say, especially your saltwater flies. The key to tying with flash in most cases is not to use too much. One of the mistakes that most people make when they tie their flies is they put way too much flash in there. A little bit really goes a long way. To finish up here, let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at some of the different types of eyes that you may use whenever you're tying your flies. Alright guys, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the eyes that you might use to finish up some of your flies. Eyes, they do help with the fish, I believe. I think that the fish will react to the eyes that you put on your flies, but they also give them a really nice look for us. They make them look more natural. There's a number of different eyes that we have here. To start with, I've got some simple doll eyes. These are something that you can find in your craft store. Most of your fly tying retailers sell them as well. The doll eyes, and then you've also got your prismatic stick-ons. This just comes on a little sticky pad. And with both your doll eyes and your stick-on eyes, you're basically just going to put them on the side of your fly where you want them to go, and you're going to seal them down with a little bit of glue or a little bit of epoxy. They really give your fly a real nice look. I'll generally use my doll eyes and stick-on eyes on flies that I don't expect to go too deep. They're going to be more my surface or just under the surface type flies. Flies that I want to sink, I'm going to go with either a bead chain eye or a lead eye. The bead chain eye just comes in these simple bead chains. To use them, you simply take a pair of pliers, clip one off, and you're ready to work. With the lead eyes, the lead dumbbell eyes, they come in these packs. They look like a dumbbell, and they'll come in all different sizes. For example, this is a 1/40th ounce. You can get these in 1/60th ounce, 1/20th ounce, so forth. To use them, you simply take the dumbbell eye or the bead chain, place it on the hook, and just start making figure eights on here to secure it in place. The thing that you have to remember when you start getting into weighted eyes is that the heavier the weight is, the faster the fly is going to sink. At the same time, the heavier the weight is, the harder the fly is going to be to cast. So whenever you tie some of these different flies with lead eyes, make sure that you go out and practice with them a little bit and get familiar with them before you get out on the water to see how they're going to cast and how they're going to react with the line that you're casting with. In general, guys, that pretty much does it for us here. We've gone through the tools and materials that you would find around the fly room. I've personally been tying flies since I was a teenager. It's a hobby that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm sure that you will too. I thank you for watching, and until next time, catch 'em up.